Oh, hey, we're live. Welcome to Krackle Comics Weekly or a Krackle Comics Special. I don't know what this is, how we're numbering these. But due to iffy release schedules and Marvel only putting things out every other week and various other factors, this week we are doing another kind of standalone review discussion of a book. And we're talking about JLA Earth 2. But despite the different format, I guess some of us have a haul segment. So we're going to do that, and then we'll talk about a book.
Oh, my name is Dan, by the way, if anyone wanted to know.
I don't know our names by this point, but
our names are they're in the corner.
Yeah, they're in the corner of the video, but I mean, for the audio listeners, it's the same as it's always is, unless specified. But all right, yeah, haul segment. I do these now, I guess. Some stuff I picked up on Wednesday. Went to some stores that were open around town, and start off with I got Superman Smashes the Klan. We reviewed the first issue of this, and then subsequently just waited for it to get collected. So maybe we'll eventually do a collected edition there. I got Batman Adventures 25, which is the first team up with Superman that's out of continuity because it's mullet Superman and he doesn't exist yet, really. So it's just kind of this neat thing. Also, there's some cool pinups in the back since it's the 25th issue. And I got JLA Avengers, the 4 issues. So that'll be finally fun to read. And then got some 3 trades right here. I got the Jessica Jones Purple Daughter by Kelly Thompson. That was that digital first book that eventually then they printed out. I can't remember if they put out issues of this or just put it out collected, but I have this. I think this is a companion to the series. She did a series before this, right? Once Bendis left, or is this lead into her ongoing? I can't remember.
There hasn't been an ongoing. I think there are 2 series in the same format, digital first. Which one is that? Is that Blind Spot?
No, that's just Purple Daughter.
I think that might be the second one.
The second one? I thought Blind Spot was the thing with Bendis and Gatos. I'm not entirely sure. And then I got the Incredible Hercules Complete Collection, Volume 1. That's the first part of the Greg Pak stuff during like the Planet Hulk era when Hercules took over Hulk's book. And then last book I got, which was a nice find being a Daredevil semi-completionist, is the Marvel Knights Daredevil Unusual Suspects trade, which has that Bob Gale portion that was never collected. And along with it has Daredevil Ninja and Daredevil Spider-Man. Daredevil Ninja by Bendis. So finally nice to grab this and to not have to pay full price for it, and getting it cheap was very nice because it's a rather thick book for content that I'm not super excited to read, and mostly for completionist reasons I have. So that's the haul segment. And without further ado, we have a book to talk about called JLA Earth 2, which is this book right here. And it is a OGN from DC Comics by Grant Morrison and often contributor Frank Quitely. It's only their second collaboration after Flex Mentallo. So this is also fitting in. It fits nicely into Morrison's often acclaimed JLA run. And the weird thing about it, though, is it brings back the Crime Syndicate, which was originally on DC's Earth 3 in the old multiverse continuity pre-Crisis of Infinite Earths. But that had Crisis wiped out the multiverse, so this is now their reemergence again. So they're on Earth 2, but it's more confusing than it much needs to be, because the Earth 2 here is Alexander's name that he gives to the Prime universe where like Justice League lives, and not where like the Crime Syndicate's coming from. The easiest way to differentiate right here is we're just going to call it the Antimatter universe and the Prime universe, because they keep referring it to as the Antimatter universe in the book. But getting into the meat of this, after the weird kind of background about it, the story sees Alexander Luthor from the Antimatter Earth crossing over into the Prime Earth to seek the assistance of the JLA in order to overthrow the evil Crime Syndicate. from his Earth. And then you see the antimatter universe is the mirror of Prime Earth. So everyone that's good in Prime Earth is evil, and those that are evil are good. So it's a mirror version, complete opposites. So Crime Syndicate's the evil JLA. So Alexander Luthor's emergence causes a plane from the antimatter universe to also be transported as well to the Prime universe, and it kills everyone inside because they weren't protecting from the barrier like Luthor was. So the JLA is sent to investigate what was going on, and they notice something's up when they scan the bodies and notice that all the hearts of the people inside the plane are on the right side of the body. And also they find $1 bills worth the face of Benedict Arnold on them and not George Washington. So that leads them to meeting Alexander Luthor, who's taken the place of Lex, as he was kind of sending out messages to lead them to him. And that's where Alexander Luthor reveals himself to the JLA, and he has a plan to save his Earth in a 48-hour plan. And with the JLA's help, he can help make it work. And then Aquaman and Martian Manhunter elect to stay behind while the rest of the JLA go to save the day as they head to the antimatter Earth. And then once there, Green Lantern, this is Kyle Rayner, traps the crime syndicate on the moon base while the JLA try to right the wrongs of their universe. And things don't go quite according to plan, as Luthor didn't see that Owlman would have a backup plan for everything, as Owlman's like kind of like Batman. He's super smart and preps for everything. So this Morrison ushering into the Bat God concept, Owlman kind of has that same principle here as well. And that's where things start getting goofy. That the JLA learns in the antimatter Earth that because evil always triumphs there, evil's always going to win. So they kind of learn that whatever their actions are going to be, they aren't going to affect a good outcome. And in doing that, Owlman kind of thinking, well, if the JLA is going to be here, we can go to their Earth and then take over their Earth, just like we took over the planets in the antimatter universe. So he also realizes that because the equilibrium is shifted, they're going to get transported there anyway in 24 hours. And then they kind of rage siege on Washington, D.C., but they're quickly able to be stopped by Aquaman and Martian Manhunter, who stayed behind. And they're able to be stopped quickly because of that equilibrium of opposites, where because Prime Earth, good is always going to triumph on evil, they don't really have a fighting chance. The other thing with it, too, is Owlman's learning the universes being stacked that way. He also sees that his mother on this Earth, by the way, Owlman is Thomas Wayne Jr., so Martha Wayne, Bruce Wayne died while Thomas Wayne lived, so he hates Thomas Wayne, his father. So, but on Prime Earth, he sees that Thomas and Martha are dead, so his whole vendetta against his father is useless, that he's not there on Prime Earth. So the JLA also see that work because the antimatter universe is too conditioned and too loyal to the crime syndicate to make any kind of long-standing change, which kind of ushers in the final act that Luthor's plan has been secretly manipulated by the antimatter universe's Brainiac, who's setting both worlds to kind of collide and smash into each other, creating a singular Earth and upgrading himself to like an nth-level intellect, which effectively rendering Brainiac a god. So kind of your standard Brainiac wants to rule everything kind of plot. While wanting to stop this, Superman discovers that Brainiac is not a machine, but actually a biological organism on the antimatter Earth, meaning that he won't kill him because Superman won't kill a living creature. If it was a machine, he would have no problem with it, as he's done so in the past many times, disabling Brainiacs. This ultimately convinces Superman that only evil can win on the antimatter universe, so JLA elects to do nothing, which sets in motion the Flash and Johnny Quick, the crime syndicate's version of a speed power individual. Their respective speed powers they use them together to move their teams back across to their Earths, allowing them to transport themselves back to their respective places, which then that lets Ultraman, the evil version of Superman, lobotomize Brainiac, saving both the Earths from the collision, saving the day. And then that's pretty much it. It's only 96 pages, so there you go. It's not very long. You can kind of see it's almost like a pamphlet sized here, but I'll open it up to the groups, and whoever wants to speak first can. What do you guys think of JLA Earth 2 by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a lot of experience with JLA stuff, but I thought this book was all right. I like the whole twist with like Lex Luthor kind of being the protagonist in this story and kind of being like a semi-hero to a certain extent. So that was kind of interesting to see. Um, yeah, I have some other notes here too, like just going through Green Lantern in the beginning when they're saving those people from the plane. A little interesting that he like specifically uses like flying monkeys to be the things that like reach out and grab people. I'm not sure if there's any like backstory behind why that's the thing he uses in his ring to grab them out of the air, but that was a little weird.
It the fact that Kyle Rayner is a movie fan and he's an artist, so all of his constructs are very kind of expressive. He's the most kind of expressive with his constructs out of the Earth Green Lanterns.
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, that's interesting. I also thought it was funny how Batman was like he basically just like trolled everyone by saying he was gonna stay on the Earth that they were at, and then he ends up going there anyway, right? Is that kind of how it basically worked out?
Yeah, he initially doesn't want to go, and then he's like, "Oh, I guess I will," since Jean and Aquaman already said that they're going to stay behind, so I guess I have to go. And then he just
Well,
thing too.
that was one of my minor questions. It's not really a big deal. And you could actually even argue to a certain extent that he kind of had the correct like impulse, because really, like, if you think about it, I'm pretty sure if the JLA never crossed over, like, I mean, the other universe would probably still be screwed, but like this story basically wouldn't have happened, and it wouldn't really have any impact on the main Earth that we know. But do you think it's in character, or does it really matter that Batman was kind of like anti-intervention and didn't want to do this? Whereas, Superman and Wonder Woman are very gung-ho, and Wally and Kyle are just kind of like, they're positive, but they're kind of like more along for the ride and following leadership.
I can only see it being in character for the notion that this is 2000s DC and we're kind of in the fallout / cleaning up of No Man's Land, so Batman would maybe want to be in Gotham more. Plus, I think it's around this time in JLA where he kind of was just like, he takes the stance of, I'll only show up if you really need me kind of deal. So I think that's playing into the way he was played in the JLA books at that time, but it's not truly in character. It's how they have to bind him for how he fits into the Justice League and this climate.
So yeah, Mike was talking about the title of this book, Earth 2. And I think that's, if you see this on the shelf and when DC was promoting it, and even like if you looked at the description for this book, like on Amazon or even on the back of the book, it's probably slightly misleading, because this book really has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with any version of Earth 2. That's just, as Mike said, when Luthor shows up on the main Earth that we know, which we would, in a meta sense, call New Earth, he says, hey, I'm calling your Earth Earth 2. Just FYI, he tells the League that. And that's a little bit funny, and this is probably the way Grant Morrison looked at it, because that's basically the entire explanation in the Silver Age, because in the Golden Age, all the characters were on a certain Earth. Well, sort of. There weren't a ton of crossovers back then. And then in the Silver Age, here's a different Earth, and then they introduce the multiverse. And then it's like, so why is the original one called Earth 2? And there's like a famous panel that like, old nerds joke about, where some kid is like, why are we Earth 2? And it's just like, I don't know. Someone named us first. Like, we were given that designation. It's all arbitrary, because like what actually signifies or in Earth 1 versus the Earth 52 and stuff like that. It's just whoever's labeling it. And that's the joke here. But the fact that they titled the story that confuses people if you just look at this book and you think it has something to do with that. And ultimately it further confuses that terminology, because really this is like antimatter universe. And at this point, the multiverse kind of sort of isn't even a thing, because this is post-crisis but pre-infinite crisis. So it's not actually that much of an issue, but the fact that this is the antimatter universe confuses a little bit of Green Lantern lore, because that has to do with the Quardians, the Weaponers of Quard, and stuff like that. But yeah, this is not Earth 2. It's not Earth 2, and it's not Earth 2. When I say 3 versions of Earth 2, I'm talking about Earth 2 with a hyphen and spelled out the word 2. I'm talking about the hyphen and the number 2, and the number 2 and no hyphen, which are 3 entirely different things.
That's not hard to keep track of.
It gives a reason for why they tried to get rid of it in 1985, and then why things got confusing again when they brought it back in Infinite Crisis.
Yeah, I think I mean, it makes sense because it's a crime syndicate, but there's a little bit of like Morrison cringe, which you'll get occasionally, and especially back in this era, like in the 90s and 2000s. And, you know, you can see why he was, you know, buddies with Mark Miller for a while and stuff. Like Johnny Quick just shoots up drugs constantly.
Yeah. Just.
And then in that same scene, when you first see him using drugs, there's something that I don't know fully how to interpret. So Power Ring, I don't know why. It's like Johnny Quick shoots up his drugs, and then Power Ring is just like, hey, my teammate that I work with all the time, check out my powers, which you've surely seen. But I guess it's just a slightly clunky way to show us, like, these are his powers. He's the same as Green Lantern. So he uses powers, but his construct is like some dumb monster thing. But also his construct has a signature on it that says Power Ring. And I don't know, it's got to be some combination, or maybe it has absolutely no relevance. But it's got to be some like parody or comment on Kyle being his equivalent in this era, Kyle being an artist himself. And then also the way the signature is done, you know, it's like a box signature right on top of the art. It very reminds you of like certain famous signatures like Rob Liefeld's and Jim Lee's and stuff like that. So I wonder if that's like this weird thing where Morrison's like tying in the crime syndicate Green Lantern equivalent to the Image Comics creators. But it's strange. I don't know how to interpret it.
It's weird. I think it's also weird that it's Kyle Rayner fighting Power Ring and not Hal Jordan, just because looking back at the original Crime Syndicate versus Justice League, it's that version. So you're also playing with it in 2000. It's a little odd because it's Wally West Flash. It's not Barry. So it's a little different. And then obviously Martian Manhunter and Aquaman are omitted for the reasons of they never had counterparts with the Crime Syndicate. So they're taken off the board in a way. So, but it's also weird that we don't get a true like JLA versus Crime Syndicate fight in this that I thought I remembered we did.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really make sense. Like, you didn't need it for the story. And honestly, like JLA Crime Syndicate fights kind of boring just by nature, in my opinion.
Maybe it's the fact like, so you're playing with toys as a kid, and if you don't have a villain, then one of your other heroes is going to become the villain. So, like, the fact is, like, Justice League versus Evil Justice League, there's an inherent fun to that, and I think it's done better in the Crisis on Two Earths movie, which that's a light adaptation of this, but also it was a scrapped 3-part Justice League episode that they kind of combined together. I think that did a better job using that. Because here it just kind of feels like, oh, well, the story just kind of ends.
Yeah. Ultraman just fries Brainiac, and it's like, that's the end of the book.
So I think the art here is good, obviously, as you'd expect, but it's you know, it's not really like the full-on Frank Quitely, where just not too long after this, he starts getting like very, very, very anal and perfectionist about his art. Because I think possibly their next collaboration with Morrison is We Three, and that has some very, you know, that's quite getting very, you know, detailed and really leveling up. On the art side, there's some really cool moments with Martian Manhunter. He draws like a really, really bulky Martian Manhunter just in general.
Well, I think everyone does this.
Yeah. And then when Martian Manhunter confronts Ultraman, it's some pretty cool art. Not like crazy, like as you might see like in some of the solo Martian Manhunter stuff, or like the huge Martian Manhunter moments, but he goes pretty out there with the shape shifting for a moment.
I think his standout sequences. I like the Batman sequence when he's confronting Thomas Wayne. The shadow and lightings on that are pretty cool, though I think Batman still is a little too big and broad. It's a little. There's other things to it. Like I think Quitely has some same face syndrome going on here. I don't think he's fully at the level that we'd see him at with All-Star Superman. And even his Superman looks a little bit different from what he would eventually get to with All-Star. Which, I mean, All-Star, I'm not going to talk a bad thing about that book at all. That book's about as perfect as art you could possibly get. But it is interesting to see, like, all right, this is Quitely, but he's not, like, at the top of his game yet. Like, it's still very, very good, but there's kinks that he's ironing out here.
Yeah, I do like how Ultraman is a super cuck.
Why
that actually,
that, Vince? Do you want to explain what that is?
For our audience.
Well, it's not even like really set up in the story. I guess you just sort of assume, you're supposed to assume that Ultraman and Power Woman would be a pairing. Superwoman. You just kind of assume that they would be a pairing, even though it's not really set up here at all. And it doesn't even make sense.
Started that the Power Woman or Superwoman is actually going with Owlman and plotting against Ultraman behind his back, because they do that in the movie too. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing is I don't know when it started. I think it was a thing even before this, like even in the Soul Rage. But Ultraman is a super cuck. Like it's a referring thing. I don't think this is originated with Morrison. But what I wanted to say is, so you mentioned that Brainiac, this is the antimatter version of Brainiac, and that's kind of sort of technically true. And this is where the continuity gets even weirder, because like a year or two after this, during the Joe Casey run on Adventures of Superman, there's a crime syndicate story, and it's a sequel / kind of actually a prequel to this story. It involves a crime syndicate, and what happens is, I'm going to get this slightly wrong, but there's like a super baby thing that the crime syndicate is after, and it ends up being Brainiac, and Ultraman kidnaps Brainiac. And so that's actually, so even though it's published after this, and I think it actually takes place after this somehow, maybe not, but the Brainiac that we see here was kidnapped by Ultraman in this Adventures of Superman arc. And then actually the next, if you like, through technical chaining together continuity, because basically every Brainiac is related in some complicated sense, the next major Brainiac thing after this is the Superman Y2K event with Brainiac 13. So actually, I believe what happens is, like, while he's getting lobotomized or something, apparently he like somehow tries to like quick boot or transfer his Brainiac mind away into something else. And so technically that version is actually what is in the stupid like CGI Y2K Superman event, which takes place around the same exact time. But other continuity mess, what this actually messes up with, because I mentioned this really doesn't mess with Earth 2 at all, but what this actually kind of messes with is the concept of crime syndicate. Obviously, Mike said they were originally from Earth 3, and they go way back to the Silver Age, early JLA, and in several of those annual crossovers, often also featuring the JSA. But that Earth was destroyed. They mostly haven't appeared since then. There's been like a slightly different version of them in like, I don't know, like the JLI kind of era, but this is their next major.
I was going to say the next big major one would be Forever Evil.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the next like huge push for them. But this story kind of, because after Crisis, most things pre-Crisis are technically still canon because weird continuity rules. But this story kind of invalidates all the prior appearances of what people previously knew as the Crime Syndicate. I mean, you could kind of no prize it and say like it's a totally different version of the Crime Syndicate, but the JLA, they don't recognize them or they're not familiar with the concept here. And the sequel to a loose sequel to this story is in the arc called Syndicate Rules, late on in the JLA run, and that's an arc by Kurt Busiek. And then he also follows that up in his weekly series Trinity. And then also the last time we see this version of the Crime Syndicate is in one of the final arcs of James Robinson's Justice League run, which was right before the next major reboot. And then ironically, James Robinson would launch a book called Earth 2, which has absolutely no relation whatsoever, again, to this.
Yeah. I'd say that some people like that Earth 2 book, though. It has no relation to this at all. It was a weird kind of cult following series during the New 52.
Yeah, but and Aquaman has a cool moment in this. The storytelling is not super duper clear, but it's a cool moment of him using his harpoon arm, which he has during this era.
I think with it being 96 pages, they got to get all the spots in quickly and then get out. And with Morrison kind of throwing these huge antimatter universe spanning concepts, there's moments where you find yourself rereading pages. I'm like, what? Oh, all right, okay. And then it's very jumpy when you're going from place to place, especially in that third act. Once the Brainiac stuff starts, it's very kind of, okay, you got to keep up or you're going to have to reread it again. At least that's how I felt with kind of the exposition that's going on, and then just like these, the Morrison level high concepts that are being thrown around. And because you don't have the breathing space that maybe normally you'd have on that because of it's only 96 pages, and like by the time you get to the Brainiac stuff, you have like maybe 15, 20 pages of book left, and 5 pages of that are going to be wrap up.
Yeah, once you get to the couple major twists, it relies a lot on like technobabble pseudoscience stuff. So you just have to roll with the punches. When Brainiac starts talking, whatever the fuck he's talking about, it's just like, oh, this is Brainiac. And then the whole like 24-hour thing, like that never fully makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But it's a good story. I mean, ultimately, like this is not, in my opinion, this is not like a perennial or anything like that. Like this is obviously not like All-Star Superman or anything like that. It's just a chunk of like this could be a 3-issue arc in Morrison JLA, and they just pulled it out and put it in this different format, probably so that Quitely could draw it. I think that's the best way to look at it, and not to denigrate it. It's just I think that's how it fits best. It's not like this is it's not like the 25 comics every DC fan should have. I mean, you should probably have Morrison's entire JLA run, including this, but this is part of a run. It's not like a standalone thing.
I mean, it's part of his JLA run, but this, I mean, I'd say you could read this standalone if you're looking for a Justice League story to pick up. But I remember liking this a lot more when I initially read it back when I first bought this, which was, I think, like high school. So it's been a while since I've read it, and I didn't love it as much as I loved it then. And, thinking back on Morrison's JLA run, like, I wouldn't read this over Rock of Ages, which I think that's the best one. And then I wouldn't even New World Order, the first story, I think I'd still like over this too. So it's good, but like it's not fighting for the classics of his JLA run, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it sounds like I not to try, like it's still good, but I mean, it's not in my top 3 of Morrison JLA stories.
So Dan, as the person who's less familiar with Justice League, less familiar with this, what we're talking about, does this get you really jazzed to read Morrison Justice League?
Not really. It was like Mike said. It was good, but yeah. I know Grant Morrison's a really great writer, and I'm really excited to hopefully read some more of his like acclaimed stuff someday. But I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of it. The art's amazing. I really liked it. Like Mike said. I don't think it's really too refined. There are a lot of times where, like, even flipping through this first page here, like Wonder Woman's face is just like a little scary looking.
Yeah, he has the same. He has some same faces on everyone in this book.
Yeah,
he's on that when he gets to All Star, obviously. But
like if I'm like giving this to somebody who's never read Justice League before, I'm not sure if this is the best book to give. It's okay, but it's not definitely the number one book probably.
I'd rather watch the movie, and like I said, the movie's not even a direct adaptation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the movie's all
Earth 1 or Earth 2.
Yeah, I was just going to say the movie is probably closer to Silver Age style Crime Syndicate than this.
I'd say I prefer this over Forever Evil, though, because I thought Forever Evil, the Crime Syndicate, was just like way too edgy.
Yeah, that was like the era where people, like the media was making fun of DC, where it would be like they count how many limbs were lost each week.
Yeah. With all like the sequence of Ultraman smashing up kryptonite and snorting it like cocaine to get a power hit was overly ridiculous and stupid, I thought. So I'll prefer this over Forever Evil, definitely. Of course, I just thought Forever Evil was just a mess.
I prefer the Squadron Supreme / Squadron Sinister, whatever. They're probably even more confusing, but I prefer them as a concept way much more over the Crime Syndicate, and I think better stories have been told with the Squadron Supreme.
If you've read them, please point me in the direction, because anytime the Squadron Supreme show up, I'm bored immediately.
Well, yeah, they're not great either. It's the same concept, but the short answer is the 12-issue maxi series from Mark Grunold and Paul Ryan from the 80s.
I got that in omnibus.
Cool.
15.
Right. Cool. For the 12 Squadron Supreme fans out there.
They're pretty cool. James Robinson also wrote a Squadron Supreme series. And he killed Namor in it. And then brought him back.
Yeah, no one dies.
That's pretty much all I have to say.
Yeah, I have nothing else. It's like I said, it's not that long of a book.
No. I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we just spoil every single page.
Well, the synopsis kind of already did that.
Yeah, but no detail. Actually, probably
already there. But looking at next week, obviously no pick of the week because we only read this. But next week, format change. We should be back doing new releases, but stuff of this week and then next week combined again, because that's how we fit a full show in. Times are still weird, but looking better in terms of releases making sense. But I think so far we're going to do new books and then like maybe one of these until we, we'll shift the format again. But other than that, that's all I got for this week. If you guys got anything else, get your gimmicks in.
No,
this is good.
Nothing else. All right. Bye.